or 20 minutes, I wanted to give you an opportunity to get to know and learn more about our new BG&T director, and that's Chris Bonnet over here. Chris. And Chris was part of a pretty extensive and competitive field of candidates. I think upwards to 35 candidates applied. We interviewed, I believe, 8. And then we moved forward, just so you know, 4 to the final interview with me. And so Chris, in his interview, stood out. And he is the BG&T director currently, well, previously, MOT, thank you, of in Templeton. And I want you to get to know him. Chris did so well. He's an impressive young man.
Yes.
And will you go with that? I like hearing that. And in his interview, what impressed us, was his ability to simplify complexity. His ability to take what we know to be very complicated things, like managing bond campaigns and really looking at how you maintain facilities and deferred maintenance and all those really tricky things, and being creative. And he won't talk about this because I'm sure he's probably too humble to do that, but it was impressive. He was getting some flack because in Templeton, the coaches were saying, well, why don't you do our fields, our football fields and our baseball diamonds in certain ways? Why don't you keep them up to, or water them or what have you? And so Chris went along and dug core samples at all the districts in the county and put them in jars and said, here's the soil, the impact on our fields, and our fields don't recover because of the soil in Templeton is different than the soil in SLO and Lucia Mar and Paso, and here's why we have to not allow so much use on the fields. So they understood that. He took the time to show them. And so I thought that was really an awesome example of the things that he does to explain and convey concern. So I've just done a basic introduction. Do you want to share?
Yeah, just a couple of things for the board to know. We had we had a lot of interest in this position. So there were literally like, I think 40 to 50 people that applied for this position. So, and Personnel Commission, we went through the whole oral board. So Chris was one of the, I think 8 people that went forward at that point. They narrowed it down to the top. We interviewed 4.
I shared that.
Yeah, top 4.
Yeah.
So, so it comes from Templeton to us. I've met Chris several times through kind of county-wide meetings that we have. So he's kind of one of the leaders in the county in terms of leading BG&T director staff. He's currently going through a really cool kind of science project, which he can talk to you about in terms of that they passed a bond measure. So he has some experience in terms of construction of bond measure, and it's something I know Joe from KBZ is thinking that building is going to be kind of a
sort of flagship.
Yeah, but he thinks he's going to win some awards in terms of cash and other things, type of thing. So it's kind of exciting in terms of some of the things they're doing right now in Templeton that we'll share. And then what I like is, in particular, is, and Chris talked a little bit about, is his background with business, and kind of how he came up and got into this role. So really excited to have him on board. And so what I'd like him to do is just kind of give a quick kind of background to the board, kind of his history and where he's at, and then answer any questions you might have.
What does MOT mean?
Maintenance, operations, and transportation.
So
We're the only district whose department is called BG&T.
Okay.
Yeah,
I figured that maybe what
basically the same kind of thing. So give him a rundown.
Thank you both.
Sure.
I'm excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to getting started and getting going. But let me give you a little background of kind of where I grew up. I grew up in northern Maine, so all the way to the top of Maine. And I went to college at the University of Maine for mechanical engineering. And once I was kind of done there, I was dating a girl in San Francisco. So I moved to San Francisco. And that didn't work out, but I stayed in San Francisco, and I went to work for a large dress manufacturer, some of you might know, Justin McClintock. And I worked there for almost 9 years.
Doing what?
I was their operations manager, so I worked on corporate office, worked my way up through that company. Had a lot of opportunities to promote that company and bring them in, you know, automation and learn new products and get them to where they were. And then I left there, went to a lighting manufacturer. It happened to be, back in the day, was the same as like Prop 39. We were going for rebates on electricity, so I did their distribution center and their corporate office and got the largest rebate check in San Francisco at that time. So the lighting company recruited me and took me away. So I worked for them, and same thing, automated them, brought them up to speed, barcoding, computerization, the whole thing. And then I decided to go out on my own and do computerized homes. And that led me to meeting a new wonderful woman, my wife now. And she was down here, so for 6 years we did every other weekend commute. So she'd come up one weekend, I'd go down. And then at some point, one of us had to give. So I figured,
Smart man.
Happy wife, happy life. So I moved, and then you know, I came down here and I started a property management business, and then I got into the schools. I got into Templeton, and very exciting. You know, it's a new challenge. I'm challenge driven, so it's a whole new world to me. But it was a hard. Well, I won't say hard. It was challenging to school thought versus, you know, private world thought. So, but I found a good balance, and I still keep it open-minded and drive towards it. For now that I've been at Templeton about 6 years, it was fun. It was when the bond just got passed, so I've been through the whole bond process, the oversight committee, and right now we're in the process of building a flagship building at the high school. It's a STEM building with administration on the end, and then 8 classrooms behind it. So we're right in the middle of that right now. So that kind of
Coming from a smaller district too, Chris has basically been the head of custodians, head of maintenance, head of grounds, head of, you know, building. There's no project manager at Templeton, right? It's Chris. So having that background of kind of, you know, leading departments, working directly with custodian staff, all those things, you know, it's going to be kind of a different challenge now because it's more of a management here where you have other directors under you. So I think it's a good,
Yeah,
you know,
it'll be good.
a good fit, something to be excited about. And
yeah, and then, you know, for Templeton, we chose not to do construction management, and I took it on, which working well. You know, we got a good architect, good contractor, and it's just been a really good fit for up there. But I'm ready for a new challenge and excited to get down there.
What type of delivery system are you using for construction of the flagship building?
Lease-back.
Okay.
Templeton pretty much sticks with all lease-back. All my projects up to this one have been on time and under budget with the lease-back process, and with the right contractors, it's been great.
Who's your contractor?
This for the STEM buildings, RSH Construction.
You know, are you still in transition, or are you down here full-time now?
Technically, tomorrow's my last day.
Okay,
So
starting here on the 22nd.
pardon me?
He's starting here on the 22nd,
Okay.
officially 22nd. So everything just cleared yesterday in terms of all the paperwork, fingerprints, all those types of things. So a little transition period, and Templeton's letting us share right now a little bit of Chris, and then we're gonna let Templeton share a little bit once he's on board. You know, if there's little things to train or help out the new staff there, we're trying to be a team with Templeton.
And Ryan and I are gonna meet with Ron Holcomb and Chris to go through
Okay, great.
the bond management plan and make sure that we're all on the same page. So we keep our train going.
Absolutely.
And Chris, your experience upgrading the lighting system, was it upgrading the lighting system for where you worked? Did I understand that?
well, when I was at the dress manufacturer, we did their 100,000 square foot distribution center, and then another 100,000 square foot corporate office, which also housed materials. At that time, it was taking 4 bulbs down to 2 with reflectors, but I had like I still remember it. It was a nice big spreadsheet. It was 2.4 year payback, so it definitely paid
Yeah, I
out.
was wondering whether you LEDs were
No,
in play at that
LEDs,
time was, yeah,
no, it was T8s and reflectors.
okay.
Now it's the LEDs, and Templeton, I just went through their Prop 39 and did all the exterior lighting and some HVAC, units on specific buildings, and then the gym is now all, the high school gym's all LED, and MPR is all LED.
So he's got that knowledge base about computerized systems in terms of helping with, energy efficiency, those types of things that I think will be kind of something that we haven't really had before that Chris will be able to share with us. Diane, so other questions?
Yeah, so aside from the bond and the construction, what do you think is gonna be the biggest challenge you're gonna face on the job? Aside from like learning the job and stuff like that?
I think it's just understanding personalities and the different sites. I found that to be a big challenge because everybody has such a different personality and different expectations. And it's trying to find the balance of, where you're standardizing and making things equal for everybody, but still customizing a little bit. So it's working with the staff. I think it's gonna be the, staff and principals and sites.
I apologize for my tardiness, but I have two questions. One is, how would you rate your ability to work with classified staff that the classified staff beneath you? Do you consider you have a good ability to relate
Oh, I think so.
to people?
I think so, because I've done all the work they're doing, I've done before, so I can understand what it takes to get the job done. And, I think I do. I can find that balance of getting the most out of everybody
And appreciating and supporting their efforts and.
absolutely.
Okay, that's great. And then my other question, or really I guess it's more of a statement, is that the board relies heavily on input from Ron Holcomb. He is our advisor to Measure D. And I don't know if you've met Ron yet.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. He's an old school construction fellow. And I hope that you'll be able to work well with him, because I should speak for myself, I do rely heavily on his input to explain things to me in simple language that I can understand. So I hope that will be a good partnership.
Of course, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I have, it's all about teamwork, so that's what I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
All right, well, we're gonna go value engineer, Chris and I, over at BG&T right now, the Student Services Building for Morro Bay High, so we actually have a meeting. So I pulled together just a quick snapshot in terms of this MOU. Eric's gonna go through the specifics of it, but it's basically these are the numbers.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna hand it out right now. So these are the numbers behind
Oh, good.
the MOU. So I had Val break down the number of students that are actually from Cayucas and Coast, and how many of our kids actually go there.
And the
You can
dollar
see-
amount that goes.
And the dollar amount that goes with those.
So Ryan, is this, and I know that,
So this is the fully funded LCFF amount.
okay, so we're going with the governor's proposed budget as of yesterday.
So I just write for right now, it looks like this is gonna happen. LCF is gonna be fully funded next year. I have no doubt that it's gonna happen. In fact, it's great news because there's a lot of extra one-time money that we're gonna receive too. So it's gonna help us, this, in terms of transition wise, so it's a good thing. I also added the 25% because part of the agreement has the base amount plus the 25%. So it's a substantial increase in terms of looking at the overall amount. So again, this is only 6th through 12th grade students.
Right, so.
Is the focus. K5 does not, there's no K5 in this, okay? Based on the current MOU, and that's
I'll explain why.
basically the breakdown, okay?
Thanks, Ryan, I
You got it.
appreciate it. And so Chris, thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, Chris.
Thank you.
Good luck, Chris.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure.
And so what I would like to do is, why don't we start with this document, since Ryan just gave it to you, and then we'll go to the MOU, and it might help you kind of understand. But so before I get going, Carrie, thank you for participating today.
Welcome.
Carrie Friend is a board trustee in Cayucas. And I did reach out yesterday to Scott Smith and Nikki Schumacher inviting them here if they'd like. But just to sort of kind of give everybody a taste of this process, since Scott Smith arrived, he and I have developed sort of a good relationship, and he, just so you know, is a homegrown person from Cayucas. So he was raised in Cayucas. He understands the community, and so he and I have developed a good relationship. So he has done a lot of the outreach to Coast. And Carrie, forgive me if I step over myself on some of this, okay? But I think I have it mostly right.
Can I correct you?
I'm sure you'll have no problem correcting me, yes. So Scott has done a lot of work reaching over the line to Coast, trying to get Vicki, Dr. Schumacher, and the Coast board to engage in a conversation around how to potentially make an MOU work. And the reason that was, I think, important is the community of Cayucas was really incensed, and has been for a long time, for all the right reasons, to be able to utilize their self-agency, if you will, to be able to send their kids to a high school of their choosing, as opposed to just being forced to send their money, their property tax money, to another community without any ability to say, you know, where their kids should go to high school. And so it's been a source of great issue, where $1.7 million potentially is going to another community, their property tax money going to Coast, going to Cambria, and they don't have any real power to decide how that works, and so how that money is influenced. And that's been a sticky wicket. We have opened up, as you all know, an inter-district transfer process internally. And we started that with Rick Robinette several years ago, and he would, instead of us just blanketly denying students from outside, we would hear their story. And we would better understand what's going on, and then we would decide yes or no. We say no most of the time, especially for those outside of our district, because of our basic aid standing. But for the students coming from Cayucas, we have, starting about 3 or 4 years ago, we decided to let them into Morro Bay High School. And the reason we did is we felt the community of Cayucas was coming together and forming a stronger committee, if you will, of community advocacy around this topic, so much to a point that they were saying, look, we need legislative intervention. We need the State Department of Education to say Cayucas should have self-determination. And for where their high school kids go, as well as their property tax dollars. And the money should follow the kids. And so the majority of the students from Cayucas going into high school have been coming to our district, specifically Morro Bay High School. And you'll see this in this document here. And we made the decision, the board has supported that decision, that, you know what, while this is being ironed out, whether Cayucas was going to get a legislative intervention for unification, a K-12 district unto themselves, perhaps unifying with San Luis Coastal, or creating an MOU. So 3 different options. And so the third option, the MOU, is what's before us today to talk about. And the reason is that the other 2 options, self-unification, comes with it all kinds of challenges that would take a long time to iron out, probably with all kinds of legal issues that would follow it. Secondarily to that, unification with San Luis Coastal would involve quite a lot of discussion, public input, and probably years before that was resolved. So the MOU has always been sort of that vehicle to resolve this issue amicably and perhaps expeditiously. So Scott Smith, in my opinion, has been dancing on that particular table for a while. With that said, when when PG&E came out and announced the eventual closure of Diablo Canyon, this issue became even more heightened. I knew that I could not go to you and ask you to support us in allowing other kids into our district at a time where we're going to lose $8 million of revenue. It just wouldn't be fair. And it goes beyond reasonableness. We then started telling our Cayucas families who were on interdistrict transfer to us that this would likely be the last year that we could allow these students into our district for those economic reasons. That intensified the pushback from the community, from Cayucas towards the Coast Board and the Cayucas Board. So you had two separate things. So the tension in both of those boardrooms has likely been pretty intense. Okay? So several months ago, Scott Smith reached out to me and said that they had the Cayucas Board approved a contract with this legal firm to initiate sort of those three options in conversation with the Coast Board or conversation with the Coast Unified District. They invited me to a meeting where I participated with Dr. Schumacher, Scott Smith, and myself, and we began to discuss the elements of an MOU. And this MOU that you will see today reflects the thinking that has gone into it, and we believe a pretty fair MOU that reflects how much we tend to spend per child in our district. We're pretty darn close with the base amount of LCFF plus 25%. Gives us about $10,000 and some change per child. And what that does is gets us close to the LCFF. Okay, I'm sorry, gets us close to what we would spend per child in our district, which is between $9,800 and $10,500 depending on the year. Okay, so given that, this MOU has been modified a few different times, so I'm a little bit conscious of the fact that what you're seeing today is what was agreed upon several weeks ago. And I've tried to sort of go back and forth, but there is a he said, she said event occurring here. And what I mean by that is I sent the latest revision to Scott and to Vicki, and as of yesterday afternoon, the consultant for Coast had not gotten back to our attorney on some of the clarifying questions, but in my mind, they're not super significant. In my mind, it's a matter of being in the weeds a bit on some of the special ed issues, and I'll explain what that is. I think it has to do with an outside consultant from Sacramento, not necessarily knowing our SLPA rules and how we work within SLPA and special ed, versus the intent of this MOU is to work with circumstances of students that come to us who might need more services than what they originally had in a previous situation, in their previous placement, and any of those costs associated with additional services would be placed back on the district of residence, and that's the essence here. So if
the concept of it having it paid by the district of residence isn't really in the debate, it's really about how to enact that.
Yes, exactly, Walt. And I want to clarify that. So I had Jan Tomsky, our attorney, contact Bob Blattner to clarify that. And as of yesterday afternoon, we hadn't heard back. So, but I pretty much can be certain that before next Tuesday, when the board will again revisit this MOU, I'm gonna ask for you, assuming you're good with it, and assuming there hasn't been any radical changes, I plan on bringing it to you next Tuesday for action, discussion and action, okay? Yes, Walt?
Will these actual amounts be put in rather than, I think the current wording makes a reference to the LCAP fully funded formula? So
Well,
maybe an appendix or something?
yeah, I could do this as an addendum. I did get contacted by the media yesterday, and they were asking about this as well, and I didn't have these actual numbers, because these numbers do change and move. But what you see on this document in front of you, I still have not fully vetted. I would need to double check or triple check. But what you have in the MOU is a formula. And this gives you just a general idea of how much money we're talking about.
So this is a snapshot in time.
It is a snapshot as of today.
Right.
And so,
Actually, Walter, the examples here represent the numbers that Ryan put in here that he said were as of yesterday's LCFF.
Good.
Yes.
Thanks for that.
and with governor's budget, these numbers will increase because of the LCFF being fully funded, very likely being fully funded. With all this said, I want you to know that the original MOU that we worked on had to do with a K-12 exchange, kindergarten through 12th grade exchange. And in full disclosure, I just didn't realize how many of our students attended Cayucas in elementary. So the number, when I looked at that, was as high as 30 students across those K-5 grades. And so when I looked at that, I was completely candid with Scott, and it was a rough meeting. And I said, look, let me tell you, the unintended consequence of this, the way it's currently written, is that that's $250,000 that I'd be obligated to send your way at a time when we're cutting. And I would have a really tough time justifying that. So, and I said, so what would happen is we as a school district in San Luis Coastal would then be in a flipped position. We would then deny our families leaving to go to beautiful Cayucas Elementary. And yet you would be sending kids to us and paying us. I'd be denying our family. It would be a mess. And I said, so this is how I look at it. K-5, if I'm an elementary parent in our district on the coast, we have 3 wonderful elementary schools that parents could choose from. If they don't like one, they might go to another. There's options. I said, so I feel entirely confident saying, no money exchanges between those. Now, by making it 612, my thinking and rationale behind that is that we have a state and national model middle school at Lomas, soon to be announced. Okay, schools to watch. I'm very confident, being a former middle school principal, that not all kids fit into a comprehensive large middle school. That some middle school students, 6 through 8, actually benefit from a much smaller setting, like Cayucas. And in that case, as a parent, I would think that it makes sense. If a child in San Luis Coastal on the coast a parent says, my kid isn't fitting into that middle school, that I would like an option to go to Cayucas where he would fit in better. That makes sense to me, and I can accept that, and I think money should exchange. Conversely, there are kids in Cayucas in middle school that would benefit from more electives, more comprehensive programs, a larger setting that would benefit from that. And I think that seems fair to me. So that was the logic behind the 6th through 12th grade language in the MOU that you're going to see today. Okay? If I could, kind of go through this document, you can or this page here, you can see the numbers we're going to be talking about. And I'll explain to you how in the MOU it will be transitioned over a 3-year period. So this money, this dollar money, overall money to San Luis Coastal, $587,346, that isn't something we will get next year if this MOU is approved. That is going to be fully at the fully funded amount over a 3-year period. Okay, so the reason being is that Coast will be responsible in large order for the most of that money coming out of their general fund. So you could imagine $500,000 coming out of our general fund overnight. Well, you will get to imagine that pretty quickly. So what this amount represents is an agreement in the MOU that Coast is going to need some transition time, something we were hoping the SLCUSD would have recognized on our behalf. That having a runway is actually very helpful and ethical. So what this is we'll get a third in general amounts, a third, and then 2/3, and then the full amount of this money over a 3-year period.
It's 22%.
Yeah, but
That's
then
not quite a third.
But then it jumps to a higher amount. I think 66%.
It's 22, 55, and 100.
Yeah, okay, so 2, 5, and then full. Okay, and I feel that that's fair. It gives Vicky and the Coast Board an opportunity to prepare to make those adjustments. And in the 3rd year, when things will really be tough on us here, having that $500,000-600,000 coming into our general fund will be helpful. Okay, so that's what this document is. The majority of the kids coming from it's really the Cayucas community, but from the Coast District are those 60 students from Cayucas and that's a 4-year, that's freshman through senior. Okay?
Can I say something
Yes,
that's probably unpopular, but I need clarification on it? Under this agreement, are we then asking Cayucas to take our K-5 students and without money following those students?
Yeah, and in the same way, they could send their K-5 students to us without money following.
Do we know how many currently we're taking that are asking to come?
Well, we have, let's see if it's in here. It's not in here, but
Is it roughly equivalent?
No, there's more of our kids going to them. However, when you look at their classes in K-5, you'll see that I think their class sizes they're still, I think, in the 20 to 21 range.
So not significantly.
They're not,
impacted?
yeah, they're not having, and I said, Scott and I talked about this. If you have a bubble in 2nd grade and you have 30 kids or 32 kids in that class, then you have the opportunity to deny kids coming in from San Luis Coastal, if that's the case. But in most cases in their K-5, they have really low class sizes. So my concern also is white flight. When we have to make reductions, potentially, I'll just call it for what it is. When we start having to increase class sizes and do the things we need to do to offset our budget loss, parents in Morro Bay and in Los Osos might say, hey, I want my kid to go to elementary school in Cayucas where their class sizes are 19, 20. I mean, I'm speaking super candidly. I don't want to pay for that white flight, right? And that's my 2 cents, okay? And I don't want to be in a situation where I'm denying those transfers. And so that's why it's not in the MOU, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so Kim, could you pull up the MOU? And I thought we could go through it, and again, any significant changes to this will be reflected based on Jan Tomsky and Bob Latner talking it through. I should have that by the end of the week, and I will upload those changes so you can see any changes from this, any changes that you'll be able to see that.
So what we're seeing here today is under discussion by Coast and Cayucas at this time?
So what you're seeing today,
Everybody's got it?
let me tell you my understanding of how this is timed out. my understanding, and Carrie, you can confirm or
Okay.
clarify, is that we are actually, looking at this MOU today. And what you see here has been shared with Cayucas and Coast superintendents. Whether they shared it with their boards, I don't know, but I'm telling you, I shared it with them, okay?
Scott sent it to us last night.
Okay, thank you.
Here's a paper copy.
And,
It's easier to follow.
And then next Tuesday, or sorry, this Friday, I will be on the agenda that will go public, will be a version of this MOU, okay? The board will be asked to discuss and take action on this MOU on Tuesday night, assuming nothing radically changes that you can't live with. Scott up in Cayucas intends to agendize it for Wednesday for their board meeting. So that would be the 17th. Coast will then agendize it for their board meeting the following week, I believe. So that would be the week of the 22nd or something, okay, is my understanding. So the idea as this unfolds is San Luis Coastal would approve, Coast would approve.
Coast doesn't meet again until February. They meet next week, and it's not on theirs for next week. They don't have it on their next board meeting. It's not on their agenda.
Posted their agenda for next week?
Yeah, I'm trying to open up that email right now.
So it's my understanding is Cayucas and San Luis Coastal will act next week.
I can't say it for Cayucas yet because our agenda comes out today or tomorrow at some
But
point.
that's what he
Well,
understands.
that's what
from
Right.
I'm saying.
Scott.
Scott
I
told
gotcha.
me he was gonna agendize it
Okay.
for action. We and Cayucas will have acted hopefully on this MOU. The ball will then be in the Coast School Board's hands in their following meeting. Now, whether that's next week, I have not got confirmation on.
Can they have 48 hours to modify a posted agenda if they want to? Or
72. So if it's a regular meeting, they have to make any changes to the agenda within 72 hours.
So their meeting's January 11th, and then they don't meet again until February.
So then it would be in their court in February.
So
So January 11th.
Tonight.
That's what Marcia, yeah, it says here's a copy of the board agenda for the upcoming board meeting on January 11th. Theirs is tonight.
Okay.
And it's not on their agenda for tonight.
So then February is when they will act.
So Eric, just to clarify, so what you're looking for from the board today is approval to bring this forward as a document for discussion and action next Tuesday. You're looking for input from the board right now. Okay.
Correct. Input, clarification, and the knowledge that our attorney, before I put this on the agenda for Tuesday night, I'm gonna have the thumbs up from our attorney that this is in fact been reviewed and seems to meet her concerns specifically regarding the special ed and 504 concerns. And that's Jan Tomsky. Yeah, and so I just, and she just hasn't heard back from their consultant.
Who's Mike?
Bob Flatner, yeah. And it seems like in his email that was shared with me to Scott Smith, his email, if I were to summarize it, was in looking at this particular MOU was, hold on one second. Well, I could just, must have left it on my desk. His email was, this looks good. There are 2 elements that we probably need to clean up the language on. And one language had to do with special education pass-through dollars. And that's why I passed it along to Jan Thompson. The other was just really what he felt some of our language was convoluted and he wanted to clarify, and then his suggested clarification really sounded better to me anyway.
It's just housekeeping.
It's housekeeping. Yeah, there wasn't anything substantive in that change. So his email to Scott appeared to be, looks good. Okay, but before I say, oh, okay, and put that in here, I want our attorney who specializes in special ed to look at it. So I talked to her yesterday, and I requested that she call Bob Blattner and clarify that language, because she said that she doesn't think he necessarily understands how our SLPA works and how the pass-through dollars work. So she said, because SLPAs work differently up and down the state, so she said, but before I say yeah, let me clarify with him what his intention has to be. We don't want to be stuck with a financial obligation with that isn't something we can point to in this MOU if a special needs student is in our district and we're left with a financial problem as a result of those needs and services, and we want it to be crystal clear. So that's where it is. So if I could just go through this with you, and I won't go through every word. I'll just, the terms of the agreement really have to do, this is an agreement that in effect says that it will begin in 2018-19 school year, so starting in August.
Are you gonna have public comment on this, or when is?
Sure.
No, I was just curious, because I have questions on different parts of it, so when would you like me to ask?
So let's go through, each 1, 2, 3, each section, and then Carrie.
So when I have a question on that section, can I ask, or should I wait till the very
Why
end?
don't
What's-
you ask the question, is it okay with the board if she asks questions
As we go through?
as we go through?
Yeah, it's fine by me, it's a study session, so I
Right.
think.
Okay, but before I do that, I wanna be very explicit on our board policy, in our 9,000 public statements and limits of board member authority. I'm not speaking on behalf of my board.
understand that.
I am my own, I gotta say that we're having issues on my board.
Okay.
So I wanna be very clear, I'm speaking as Carrie Friend.
Okay,
Okay.
So-
right, we understand that. And, there was something else I was gonna say, Eric. Gosh, it eluded me, but, yeah, why don't we go through that, and then we'll, as we go through, the board will ask you for clarifications. Again, what we want out of this is basically a thumbs up or thumbs down for you to bring this document forward as is, or modified for next Tuesday's meeting, and so we can hopefully get the document on our agenda tomorrow.
That's exactly right. And,
Okay.
and my hope is, or my intention is to be able to say to our board that not only have we, reviewed this publicly, but also that our attorney has looked at it and given a thumbs up that this seems to cover our bases and things that we wouldn't otherwise know. Okay? All right. So the agreement, item number 1, the terms of the key essence here is that once you adopt this, it stays in perpetuity unless all 3 parties, meaning Salem Coastal, Cayucas, and Coast, all 3 agree that it needs to be revised.
Or a district loses basic aid.
And in here in section 14,
Yeah,
Right.
it says in the
Um,
event that any of the parties loses its basic aid status, the agreement may also be amended or terminated.
yes.
So if I have a question on 14, should I just wait to get there? It's referenced here. Should I just wait?
Yeah, would it be best if I go through the whole thing and then let Carrie kind of point to the questions she might have?
Well, but what I don't want, what I think I'd like, depending on what our board wants, is, I think as we're going through it, there may be questions on each section, so I think for our board to be able to ask the questions is really what I think I'd like to see.
But he's asking if I should wait till you guys are done with your questions.
I think it's okay to
Yeah.
go ahead and as we go through.
But this is talking about 1, but then referring to 14. I have issue with 14, so should I wait till that
Why don't you
section?
just wait till 14?
Wait till 14.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I wanna make it really clear, the purpose of this here is to make sure that if one district gets cold feet and doesn't wanna fork over X number of dollars, that the board can just say, or a future board could just say, yeah, we don't wanna play anymore. We don't wanna do that. And that's why this is written the way it is, okay? And looking at $587,000, of which the majority of that money is coming from one district, Coast, annually, is why this agreement is the way it is.
So is Coast's budget, do you have any clue about how much Coast's, operating budget is? I'm guessing it's probably around $15 or $20 million. Would you?
I think it's less than that.
So maybe closer to 10 million perhaps?
But we know how much, Cayuga sends Coast $1 million.
The last time I called Barbara Goodwin at the county, they got $1.56 million.
Right, but again, I'm just curious, no matter what, if their budget's $10 million and you take $500,000 from their budget, it's a big hit for them.
Exactly, which is why number one is so important. Okay? I want to make that super clear. Okay?
But year to year, in perpetuity, whatever that word is,
Perpetuity.
one of the three options that Cayucas is looking at is not unifying with you, it's legislation. What if that goes through? You know, then it would be the best of both worlds for you and Cayucas, because then we could be a component district of you. Coast isn't going to let us go. So there's a problem with that. So being that we have other issues that we're trying to fix this problem with, this being MOU being one of them, but the community would still rather you get all of our money. If that happens, we're still stuck.
Yeah, and that was discussed at length. It's a matter of how the reality of that happening. That's the underlying question.
And when, in the meantime.
And when. Yeah, I was in a negotiated meeting on this, and it was made very clear to everyone in the room that will not necessarily happen without a fight.
So is what Carrie's saying, I'm having a hard time. Are we talking about the possibility of approving this agreement while Cayucas concurrently moves towards self-unification?
Legislation.
The resolution that we passed said we'd look at three options. One was legislation, another one was K-12 unification, and another one was an MOU. So the board really is, at the moment, is kind of looking at all three.
Well, why would the board approve and sign this agreement if they're still gonna pursue the other options?
That's a very good question that I would like to ask at our board meeting on
I
Wednesday.
think that's a great place to ask it.
Right.
All right.
That's exactly one of my questions.
Item number 2.
You're having a board meeting this Monday?
Wednesday. Did I say Monday? I'm
You
sorry.
did.
Sorry, Wednesday.
And obviously, I'm bringing this MOU to you because I believe this is in our best interest. Okay? And item 2, the purpose of this agreement is that money will follow the children, 6 through 12. And we discussed that. Questions on 2? Okay. Item 3, and then there's a formula that goes with it. Item 3 is defining the elements of the base grant amount, which is linked to LCFF.
I'm satisfied with that description from my previous.
Yes, thank you. District of residence is where the child originates and lives and then attends versus the attend. District of service is where the child attends, and the interdistrict transfer, or IDT, has to do with that process that we all follow. Okay, for which we have an internal process that we've developed 4 or 5 years ago, and it works really well, I believe, and I want to maintain that. Yes, Walt?
And so there's gonna be a good faith processing of the interdistrict transfer request, but we still have the discretion for, let's say, some student with maybe a history of behavior issues or something like that, that we could still turn down interdisciplinary.
Yeah, exactly, which is, I think, really critical in here, that we maintain, all districts maintain sovereignty over their process of interdistrict transfers.
And they still have there's still the appeals process through the county office.
Yes.
And the number 4, the compliance with law policy.
Yep.
Part 15.
So our policy for interdistrict transfer remains the same.
Except for later on, it says you'll process them promptly. So what does that mean? Because the current process, which I appreciate, my daughter's on
Process
one.
does not mean approval.
Right, okay, I guess what my question would be, what a lot of the Cayucas families and us being one of them, when my daughter was a freshman, those approvals aren't done till after everybody else is registered. I asked if I could go to the orientation. I was not allowed to go to the orientation because we weren't registered. So if that same process, even if this is being accepted, the Cayucas students get last pick or last chance to come and talk to.
That's covered. I thought.
That's what I was asking, because he said the same process, but then later on it says.
No, what I meant by the same process is that we control who we accept and who we do not accept. That's the process.
Oh, okay, so they could still get, okay.
The timing of that, the reason that you experienced what you experienced is because we wanted to see who within our own district was going through.
Oh, sure.
But this will resolve that.
Okay, perfect.
Right?
And in C, when it says interdistrict attendance permit, isn't that the transfer? Just the word is throwing me for a loop. Top of the page under C, approval of an interdistrict attendance permit. What is that? What's a permit?
Yeah, I think that's just the approval process.
Okay.
That's what that is. That's when Kimberly on our internal, Kimberly McGrath and Val, when they come out of that meeting, Kimberly says, yes, approved, Val stamps it,
Oh, I see.
and it gets into the system, and that child will then show up on the, on our,
Rolls or whatever,
rolls,
yeah.
Okay.
so that you won't have that experience. Jim?
I just saw what she referred to in number 5, in that section,
Right, promptly.
responsible to the district of service. I think that maybe answers the question.
And we didn't define promptly.
That's what I have written,
The
define.
agreement, the assumption, and let's just say, for the most part, that's us. My assumption is that promptly means you apply for transfer, you get a meeting. Because of this agreement, on the tails of that meeting, assuming there aren't behavioral, issues beyond our awareness now, assuming all things being okay, that prompt means, yeah, you've been accepted, here's your paperwork, let's go.
And the meeting, when a parent requests a meeting, that meeting generally takes place pretty quickly.
Yeah,
It does.
and it happens during, I think, February?
Well, no, that's the open enrollment stuff. So interdistrict transfers happen all year round. And normally the process happens fairly smoothly and quickly. We receive an application, we send them a letter of denial, they contact us and we get a form to make the appeal. As soon as we get that back, Val schedules a meeting probably within a week or less. And they get that consideration. Now, the issue that Carrie raised happened a couple of years ago.
Happens every year for the current 8th graders. Well, because the problem
Not
is
necessarily. The reason that it happened when your daughter was coming through was at that particular time, our circumstances were kind of in flux, and Mr. Robinette chose to sit on all of the transfer requests.
no, you guys were fine.
Until the questions happened.
The promptly, I would really like that defined, because it really wasn't so much on the San Luis coastal side. It was the promptly is important, because Coast won't give you a release until a certain time. So if it says promptly, I want that defined so Coast can't just sit on it until March.
Well, why don't your negotiators meet with our negotiators and work that out? So
that-
what is the
okay.
first step? Is the student go to their district?
To the district of
Of
residence.
residence and
You
initiate
get a
the
release.
process, and then the
Get
district
released.
of residence notifies the district of service, and then we act.
And because of this agreement, what will likely happen is we won't, as part of what we do, is we won't send a blanket denial.
Right, right.
What
exactly.
we'll do
This
is
is
we'll
great.
revise that form.
Good faith acceptance.
We'll
Right.
revise the form, and when they approve it on their end, it will be signed and sent to us. However, we need to review that.
It seems to
Right.
me that
For the other condition.
there are two issues here for me. It seems to me that it is in our best interest, San Luis Coastal's best interest, to promptly approve these things for two reasons. One, because we want to know what kids are coming to our school, and for master scheduling purposes, we need to know who's coming and who's not coming.
Yeah.
And secondly, every time we deny, if this is approved, every time we deny a transfer, we're losing out on $10,800, and we might get stuck with it anyway.
Ooh.
Right?
If the county overturns.
If the county overturns it, and the county has had a history of overturning our denials.
Well, this doesn't exist. That's an interesting.
That's right.
I'm just wondering, what's the county's voice on what they're gonna do should the situation Chris identified comes up? Because it's a different ballgame.
That's an interesting
If
question.
we turn somebody down under this MOU, there should be some underlying reason beyond just the transfer of students and money. And
That's right. And oftentimes, when we do deny, let's say not from Cayucas, but from another district, it has to do with attendance, it has to do with behavior, and or high needs of some kind that wouldn't be compensated. So those are the three. The county has been known to overturn those.
So can I?
In this case though, if that child comes to us, even if we deny it and the county overturns it,
You get the money.
we still get the money because they're a student that comes to us.
So as long as it's a student that comes to us, even if, and I just want to be really clear about this because it does concern me. A high need student or a student comes to us that we have denied for whatever reason.
Yeah.
That this agreement covers that if the County Office of Education approves that denial. I think we need to be crystal clear about
Then
that.
the child's entrance defaults to this agreement.
I just want to make
I
sure
don't-
that the
I don't
child's
think
interest
the MOU
defaults to the
says-
agreement,
addresses that, so.
not something else, not where the county says.
That's great feedback.
You
Yeah.
have to,
It
you
makes
have to
sense.
take this child
type it up.
Yeah.
and your basic aid school district, and
Yeah.
because I just
So
want
we'll
to
add
be
that-
really clear.
We'll add that in
about
item E.
that.
Item E, under that section 3, we'll add E.
Is everybody good with good with thinking about that?
Yeah,
And so,
Yeah, no, I get
You
it.
guys, Jim, Marilyn?
I'm just trying to figure out, where you're gonna put that again, item
I
E.
don't see any.
3E.
There is
so,
an
no, Jim, I would add an E.
Create an E.
Oh, okay.
I'm
so
sorry,
only
I would
one.
create an E under, so 3E,
3E.
underneath D, I would put if district of service denies
Right.
the transfer.
You mean
and the
SLOCO,
county-
you mean SLOCO denied. Oh, I see,
No,
never mind,
and-
I got you.
And the county overturns it on appeal,
Right,
the district of residence is responsible to pay.
Right.
correct.
That would be an excellent,
That this agreement we have is enforced for those children.
got it.
So if the county office overturns a denial, isn't a inter-district attendance request granted ultimately anyway, even?
Yeah, but not under the terms of this agreement, so I think you're right,
Well, no, I
because
think
the
so
district
too.
of service could challenge.
So-
I'm just looking at 6A.
Of the special ed and the
Well,
504.
just any student.
Well,
Oh, right.
I'm just looking at 6A because it basically makes reference to inter-district attendance promptly upon receipt, so I don't know whether the county overturning process, I do think clarification would be a good idea, I just don't know in the structure of the agreement where that fits with that.
But you know what, this was never raised in our discussions, but it's a great point, because these are the things that will come up, and so I will add that in.
So we want to have them abide by the terms of the MOU.
Correct.
I'd lay out the scenario for our lawyer and kind of see what she thinks of it.
I will call her today and follow up. That's a really good point. And then 4 is compliance with the law, okay? Just because. 5, responsibility of the district of service. So this is very important. The district will process those applications promptly, and perhaps putting some definition to that, within 2 weeks, or, that type of thing, would be, I think, good for everybody, because we all are driven by timeframes. And so this would probably be mutually beneficial. We'll register ID, yes, Walt?
Would it be helpful to get the word out to parents who are considering an interdistrict permit, that transfer, that they don't have to wait until a certain deadline? The sooner they can get their wishes known, we can establish.
So that's something we can,
Well,
we can do internally.
Is
I
the
would
word out there,
caution-
Carrie, that people?
Oh, Cayucas will know.
Yeah.
If this gets approved, there's one email to the 8th grade parents and it's done.
Okay.
Yeah,
So we do this already. Like Carrie said, the parents are more aware of this than anybody, right? And they start fretting about this early on.
probably in 5th grade.
5th grade. And so this will come as great relief.
Yeah.
Good.
To a lot of families, and we'll communicate, all 3 districts will come together and communicate. Mark?
So I don't know if this is the right place, but as an ancillary detail, what if are we gonna set a max on how many students we're accepting? And if the applications go over the number, or we're gonna be forced into a lottery situation, or?
No, because the vast majority of these students are coming from Cayucas, and Cayucas is a small school.
I went to the high school where there's plenty of room.
And there's,
Well, that's.
Morro Bay High has, and given this agreement, especially, item 5, we'll know early on what enrollment looks like, and we'll staff accordingly.
Okay.
We are getting money for the kids, so we'll staff accordingly.
Well, in reality too, you have 60 legit IDTs right now. There's a lot more that aren't legit, that students attending, that people are just false addresses, and so I don't see your number changing too much.
Well, Mark, what's your underlying question? Is it?
So my underlying question is we don't know what's gonna happen in Los Osos in terms of growth. We've been on sort of a flat trajectory. I think the last time.
It's flat down, it's declining.
Okay, and the last demographic study was still flat?
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
it's actually down,
Okay.
not flat, it's down.
Okay,
It's
so
declining.
this is what I'm hearing. So we believe that we have openings to handle as many as Cayucas can send us without setting max or setting up a process for accepting.
Yeah,
I think the thing, if I can, I'm gonna interrupt you for a minute, Eric. I think the thing is that we've already got them all.
Right.
There's like 5 kids we don't have, right? I mean, that's about it.
Last count, they had 3.
So we're getting them all anyway, and there's only a certain number of.
Well, some are at mission, some are transferred. I mean, you're getting the majority of them.
That's what I'm thinking.
And it'd be
3, 9 through 12.
Yeah.
You'd be to hire more staff.
What's the capacity?
Because Cayucas goes through 8th grade.
So if those 3 came to us through this process, it wouldn't be enough to force a new section of anything, it wouldn't have.
Yeah, and Coast would still get $1 million for nobody.
Yeah, a bigger concern that I have, looking at the enrollment projections, on the coast, bigger at San Luis, at Morro Bay High School in particular, is you're looking at a high school that is going to be in the 750s.
Yeah.
So as opposed to the 840s.
And it has been as high as almost 1,000 students.
So that's our new reality. So we need to frame our programs with the new facilities being built. We need to make sure that those are viable. And so I happen to think with this agreement that we could see more coast kids coming out of it. But we'll see. But I don't think it's dramatic. I just don't see it.
So I know we're talking
transportation.
And this does allow
Sorry, Mark,
coast
go ahead.
kids to come on the same basis.
Mark, did
Yeah, so our sort of qualitative feeling is we're good, but so in the facility master plan, did we set, oftentimes in those plans it said this is the maximum capacity for Sincheimer, this is the maximum capacity.
Yes.
Did we have a number for Morro High School?
I believe 1,000 to 1,200.
Okay. All right.
Which I don't think we're gonna see in the foreseeable future, not in our lives.
I was looking for a heart, so.
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you.
The capacity at Morro Bay High is easily over 1,000, easily.
All right.
Right, Jim?
It's been over just a little,
I think it was close to 1,200 many years ago when I first began.
maybe.
When we were in our heyday.
Tons of it,
Yeah.
tons of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so really, district of service, A is, that we'll promptly, process those, and I will talk to our attorney about timeframes. And then B, each district will invoice districts promptly as well, section 8. And 6, responsibilities of district of residence, or DOR. Each district shall process requests for interdistrict transfer promptly. So in other words, parent from Coast or Cayucas goes to Coast because their child is going to transition to 9th grade and says, I want to go to San Luis Coastal. Coast has to promptly respond to that IDT, get it to us so that we can do our process. And that applies across, okay? If a middle school's parent from San Luis Coastal wants to go to Cayucas and they come and fill out the paperwork, we have to do the same thing, okay? 7, annual meeting.
But wait a minute, what about 6B? Why does it take, why no later than 120 days? Why does the district need 4 months potentially to pay that
Well,
invoice?
this was a long conversation in negotiations, and really what it amounted to was parent comes in, in May or summer. Now you're caught in the summer. We're still,
It may have
This-
something to do with cash flow, at P1 and
Right.
P2 when the
That's
districts
right.
get money or tax payments, so they got a lag time, so if Coast has to write us a $500,000 check, we don't want them to.
Yeah, but the $500,000, okay. I just think that's too
That
long.
actually makes sense to me because all three of us as basic aid school districts only receive our revenues twice a year.
yeah, this really was a brief discussion at the table, and I don't think it matters for us as long as we are going to get that money and plan for it, okay? And if we have the money, if the money's there, we'll get it sooner. If not, and they're waiting for a cash flow, we have 4 months to get that going. Okay,
And then there's a draconian 5% late charge too, so you don't want to screw around.
that's right. 7, the annual meeting. This means that we will meet and answer. We'll work out the kinks, is what this is. Work out the kinks. How's it going? What's working? What's not working? So as board members, when you hear things, like, oh, my kid wasn't invited to the registration, or because that doesn't seem right to me. So let's resolve that.
Right.
Okay.
So this isn't setting the cap, this is just so you know numbers.
This is really working out the kinks, annual meeting, okay? And probably verifying that, okay? And 8, payments to district of service. It really highlights and outlines all of those specific things, from the 25% to the base amount to the grade level, okay? And anchored it to CBEDS. Okay, and B really highlights and lays out the grade spans and the amount. Those base amounts will change based on the annual budget.
Right.
Okay. C, this is where for us it's very, very important, and that is the special education cover for us. Okay, and D is, and this, item C, this is where Jan is working with Bob Blattner to clarify. D, it's the matter in which we invoice. E, subdivision D, which is payments calculated, and you can see this is the transition. This is how we're, going to receive it over a 3-year period. This allows Dr. Schumacher to be out in her community and saying, look, we're gonna ultimately be responsible for $500,000 hit to a $10 million budget.
So the other thing I just want to point out about special education expenses is that we're already serving kids from Coast and Cayucas, our severely handicapped students. We're getting, I think that's what you're talking about, we're getting that SELPA, we're getting the SELPA formula money for those students, and they're not inter-district transfers.
Correct.
So-
Because we are their regional program.
Right, exactly.
When we take over from the county.
Yes.
From the county.
That's right. We're their regional provider. Coast is too small to have those programs, so they rely on us. And Bob Blattner may not know that, which is what's bringing up that.
So with the special ed, are you talking to anyone in Cayucas about the verbiage and all that? Because I don't understand all that either.
Yeah, so Cayucas already, we're
Oh,
the
okay.
regional provider for Cayucas already.
No, but you said Blattner and that woman's name are working on this verbiage. Is Cayucas being included in that discussion?
No, because,
Oh, because they'd be high school kids. I got it. Yeah. I can't verbalize that, but I know.
yep. And I think it's personally, I think it's tomato is what this is. The way I looked at it, but I'm not a special ed attorney, so I want to make sure our special ed attorney specifically says to us, me, you're covered in this event, so that I can say to you, when you ask me, are we covered if this happens? I can say, yes, our attorney has verified that, okay? And I do want to say, this doesn't, even if we approve on Tuesday, it doesn't mean that we're done. It could be that Coast or Cayucas has some revisions that come back to us, and I have to bring it back to you for approval, okay? And then F.
Well, for E, can I go back to E for a minute?
Mhm.
That starting at 22%, see, I mean, I understand something's better than nothing. I totally get it. But if it's going to be phased in on a 3-year, why not do it 1/3, 2/3, 100%?
You should ask your board.
I'm going to.
About that, but
Well, we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. This is the first. Oh, I'm not part of that. I'm going to ask that, but I'm asking you guys too. I mean, if we all have to vote on it.
So,
that makes me uncomfortable because it feels like we're negotiating an agreement with you.
I'm just bringing up a question.
So, well, I mean, Chris, I'd like to respond.
Yeah, please respond, Eric.
You sent me to negotiate.
Yeah.
I was there with all 3 districts were present there, and this was a long discussion. And I, as your negotiating representative, said I could live with this. This is not what I put forward. I'll be honest with you. I put forward 100% day one.
That's where you should start.
Good work.
Yeah, and the truth is they wanted to spend less than this. They wanted this to be, I think, a 5-year rollout.
That's right.
So we got it down to a 3-year rollout from a 5-year rollout, and this is the percentage. So we'll get. It's not ideal. It's not perfect, but this is what I think we can. When you look at our trajectory as a district, you know, you can give them the news, the bad news from PUC yesterday. You know, even with all that,
Well, wasn't that, just to clarify, wasn't that a revision by the ALJ and his ruling, not an amendment of the CPUC?
The CPUC hasn't ruled yet.
Right.
It's the ALJ's amendment, and that goes to the CPUC.
Right, the CPUC is meeting today, right?
yeah, but
Anyway, I just wanna make sure I understood.
you're right, Walt. And I'm sorry, I've jumped to that conclusion.
Well, what was your impression, just your gut feeling, that if we attempted a rollout at 1/3, 2/3 full implementation over a 3-year period, how would that fall with others?
What came back to me was, it is still a 3-year rollout. We still will get 100% in the 3rd year. What came to me was they need time to go to their community potentially for parcel tax.
Right.
So they don't have to do massive layoffs. So that's what came my way, and I understand that. Believe me, I know it as well as anybody because I'm living with it every night. So
Rick, you
I can live. I think this is fair. Is my point.
all right, and this is something that you can live with, and
And I'm
You
putting
believe
it
meets,
in
you
front of
believe
you.
meets our needs in the best negotiated way that it can.
Yeah, in the third year, the second and third year, we're gonna really need those resources more than we are next year. Because next year, we're gonna get some one-time money. Our property taxes are up. And it's, the real collision occurs in the second, third, and fourth year out for us financially. And I wanna try to mitigate that hit as much as I can. That's why on item C, I could live with it, I think, or E, I feel is a compromise. They met us relatively halfway. We'll get full implementation on third year out. Okay, I believe 2020, 2021, I believe Diablo Canyon will close in 2021. I believe, which means we'll get zero. See, right now, we're getting declining, unitary tax dollars, but by 2021, based on that agreement that I think is gonna land with the PUC, the writing on the wall there tells me the plant's gonna likely be announced to close in 2020, 2021, which to me means we'll lose 4 years of unitary tax revenue that we would have gotten, though decreasing, we still would have gotten, we won't get any. Does that make sense? But we'll have 100% payment from this agreement at that point. So it'll help, okay? F, and then I won't bother you with my thoughts on what's gonna happen with funding and state funding and basic aid districts as a result of that, okay? F, invoices submitted under this agreement, payable upon receipt, okay? Or a 5% draconian hit, as well said, okay? A penalty. G, each district of residence shall remain financially responsible for students attending districts of service, including those with 504 plans. Thank you for the feedback. That's really good.
We're gonna get to it in 10, but it seems 10 is more ambiguous than what 8G says as far as financial responsibility for special ed students. We'll get there, let's just.
Okay.
So for G, how come it says district of resident shall participate in any meetings that may involve costs associated with these support plans, which we're talking about 504s, how come they don't have to attend IEPs?
They do. Well,
I know that, but that's why it doesn't say in special ed, if you have to attend 504 meetings, why wouldn't the district of residents have to attend an IEP meeting?
Well, actually, where was that? It's somewhere in here.
I mean, because you're responsible to pay either way, 504 IEP or special ed, but why wouldn't the district who's gonna be ending up paying for it have to attend those meetings? Because if IEP is law, 504, you have to, well, it is.
What? I thought we did include that.
It's in
Where is that, Kim?
8C.
It doesn't say meetings though.
No. I thought I saw language, maybe it just didn't land in here, that had participates.
Yeah, so that one sentence up in G should just go in C for IEPs.
Eric, we would definitely want, I think we would definitely want that language in there because it protects us as well.
Mhm.
If we have a student that goes to Cayucas, for example, that requires our attendance at the meeting, through special ed.
They would be on our IEP to begin with in that scenario, right?
Not necessarily if the kid was identified when they got there.
Later, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I will add that language of district of residents shall participate in any meetings. I will add that to
C.
C as well. It's a good catch.
Yeah.
And then 9, resolution, dispute resolution. Informal discussion, resolution panel, sort of like that protocol.
Was the county consulted on that? It says if they don't want to agree to that, but have they seen that paragraph?
Well, that's normal protocol for
Okay.
conflict resolution and the role of the county
Okay.
anyway. And we, you know, all three of us, meaning San Luis Coastal, Coast, and Cayucas, kind of all agreed that we would not include the county Office of Ed in this MOU process. Not that, for no malicious reason, but it's just one more agency that we didn't need to have a journey with. And this kind of kept it between us. Okay?
You know, that amounts to binding, essentially binding arbitration.
Yeah.
You're bound if 3 out of 4. So, go for the outcome.
Good point. And then
That
10.
might be okay, I just pointing that out.
Now, Walt, this indemnity piece, could you talk to me more about that?
My first problem with it is the first sentence is really convoluted even for a lawyer. And it actually is it kind of goes around in a circle because it ends up with the duty to indemnify, hold harmless, yada, yada, yada. And then it all ends up coming down to the acts of omission or negligence arising from the indemnifying party. So you've got, and I gotta tell you, I mean, and then the next part is each district will be responsible for the defense of any claim brought against them pursuant to special education law. But other parts of this language means that the district of residence retains the financial responsibility. So this seems to undercut that, or at least make it ambiguous. So I'd kind of like to see Jan take another stab at the indemnity clause. And it's not to change what we think is the meaning of it, but just to make it clear. You know, because it's really the party whose acts of negligence or omission cause the harm that is going to be the district or the party who's going to be indemnifying all the rest of this.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I read this and my eyes rolled back in my head. I don't know how you do that for a living, but this.
You cut and paste from other.
So I will have Jan look at this
Okay.
and provide a suggestion.
Yeah, and make just to make the special ed piece consistent with the other components that we agree.
Right, and my understanding about the special ed piece, my experience anyway, is that if we accept a student under an IDT, we become their district of residence for the purposes of special education.
Oh, interesting.
Right, for all reasons for the purposes of special education.
22. Or
Potentially.
they no longer attend.
Potentially, we're responsible for transportation, all kinds of stuff like that. And so that's why, I think that's why the piece about the special education costs.
Under special ed law, because
Oh,
we've
yeah.
written this thinking that the home district is responsible for all those costs.
Not unless we negotiate it with them, because I'll give you an example.
That's
of
what we're trying to write into
Okay, so I'll
this.
give you an example of something that I saw happen up in Atascadero and Paso. We had a student, Atascadero did an interdistrict transfer for a student with severe disabilities. Atascadero accepted this Paso student. The Paso student, the classroom was moved to Santa Margarita. Atascadero was responsible for transportation from Paso to Margarita for that kid. And then when the kid acted up on the bus and Atascadero wanted to pull transportation, they were the ones that were on the hook for providing transportation because he was their kid.
I remember that.
Right.
I was on
Yeah.
governance.
It was a difficult situation, and Atascadero was forced to pony up for that, even though the kid was a Paso resident because they'd accepted him as an IDT.
The resolution was private transportation of some
I
sort?
don't remember what the resolution was, but
Alternate transportation
Yeah.
besides the school bus.
Can we address Chris's concern through language?
well, I think we tried to do that in.
So we did an 8C,
8C.
but here's the thing is I will have her clean up 10 and I will raise that issue or those kinds of issues that I really think it falls under this notion, the gestalt,
Right.
that when you have a special ed student coming to us on IDT, the district of residence will participate in the meetings and in the services provided,
At least get an invitation.
at least get an invitation.
And
Yeah.
and I'm frankly really happy with this, with C and G on this. I think this is
You feel good, I feel good, Chris.
Oh, well, it's right.
No.
Yeah, I just feel there's actually no obligation, once we accept an IDT, and so if we can get C and G, I think we're golden on this. I mean, for this particular piece of this.
Okay, then we go to 11, insurance. That's liability insurance, so that no additional level of liability insurance is required by this agreement.
Do we know the other party's current level of liability insurance? Just saying, if everybody's agreeing to maintain their current level,
Can we define
we
amounts?
probably, they may insist, and they
I
may
think
all
all
have
of the county
essentially the same.
districts are
I
insisting
kind of think
$10
we're all
million.
part of the same
Okay.
boat, but I will find that out. Severability. If any provision of this agreement is held by a court of competent jurisdiction to be invalid, illegal, or unenforceable, such provision shall not affect the validity of any other provision of this agreement. Okay. Waivers. No waiver of any provision of this agreement shall be deemed or shall constitute a waiver of any other provision, okay? No waiver shall be binding unless excluded in writing. 14. Carrie, this is where you might have amendments, termination. A. Now, we spent a lot of time on this, so you know. So A, this agreement may be amended or terminated only by mutual agreement of all parties hereto, duly executed in writing by the superintendent of each party and approved by the board of trustees. So this is a big deal. Such amendment or termination shall be effective on the July 1st subsequent to such amendment or termination. B, in the event that any of the parties hereto loses its basic aid status. Walt.
Basic aid status is not defined under definitions, but can we put community funded status? Because
yeah,
I know what basic aid is, but they stopped using that term, but.
Well, for what it's
I think we need to make it.
for what it's worth, they still use basic aid all over the place, but
That's the legal term of the state.
but it's
Oh, it is? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
community funded is a
I
So
thought-
PR
that we have
community
chosen.
funded.
Okay, I thought it was $122 we used to get with the basic
Yeah,
aid.
big
Yeah.
122.
And then that went away, so, okay, I'm good with it then.
And so I just want, if I could, share with you the reasons for this. And Carrie gets to what you had mentioned earlier, but our thinking here in A and B is A is we don't want Coast to get, well, if I put yourselves in their shoes, you know, that's $500,000 of a $10 million budget, and they've baked it into the cake like we've baked ours into the cake. So they are up against that. And so that $500,000 could quite easily turn into $600,000, $700,000 if things go like I think they might. Therefore, it locks us all in. It brings peace to the region and you know, all those statements. Mark?
To me, the other benefit of this is boards change. And
That's true.
the next coast board may go, we don't like this. And
That's
so
right.
if we lock it in now.
So we locked it in, and then the B has to do with my concern, and I think all of our concerns here in this room, is that basic aid districts are rare, and the next economic downturn will become more vulnerable than ever, in my opinion. And the reason is I have good friends now that I'm on this SF squared board, who I look at what they're making per child, and my skin crawls. We're talking districts who are getting upwards of $30,000 per child, in addition to one-time money from the state. We're just 4 miles away, a stone's throw, you have districts who are getting $9,500 per kid. That to me is an extreme that any legislative body, when they look at it, will say that can't continue.
We used to be the poster child.
I think what could happen, actually, it's not gonna be the districts with high concentrations of poor kids and English language learners, because they're already gonna get a bunch of money. It's gonna be the districts that are that are getting the LCFF base grant only, that are really gonna be pushing on this one.
Yeah, and Chris, you're right, and
I think that's what
when I
it is.
look at what's happening in California,
Yeah.
I just don't think that extreme is gonna be tolerated much longer. And I think what the board's gonna see on Tuesday night is a resolution for adequate funding from CSBA.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I put that on there is that I think CSBA is trying to push something onto the ballot in November.
2020.
Is it 2020? Okay. But the idea is that, you know, to really push towards California getting in the top 10 instead of the bottom 40. And
it aligns with our future.
And so we need to be a champion for adequacy for all school districts in California. I personally think basic aid school districts, fundamentally, I think it's unfair, but it is the way it is. And to be fair and equitable, the mantra now is equity. And I don't think it's right that Palo Alto can pay its teachers $130,000 a year salary, and East Palo Alto, I don't know what they call it, Ravenswood now. Ravenswood is barely paying $85,000. It just is, that disparity just pains me, and it's just not right. And it's happening. We're a low wealth basic aid district, as all of you know. And so, you know, I think the revelation here is Coast is paying, they're getting, because of Cayucas' money, they're getting upwards of $20,000 per child. 18 to 20,000 per kid.
I don't know exactly what
It's
the
a
number
huge
is.
number. It's a big number. We're getting maybe 10,000. And Cayucas
salary schedule exceeds ours, doesn't it?
only in 1 or 2 cells. Total compensation, we're still way up, we're still on the top. But that said, this agreement binds us together in perpetuity unless when basic aid goes, this agreement will go. And then we'll just get whatever that kid comes in gets. Walt?
That part B, the sentence construction is kind of confusing to me. You have the prepositional clause that then has a comma, so, and then it goes on to say that it goes on to say what it says in part A. But what is it, so is it the party that loses their basic aid status that can terminate?
I had
or
the same
withdraw?
question, and I think,
Yeah.
I'm
Or
wondering
does
if
that
we could
be
take out,
unanimous?
instead of one of the parties may withdraw, such party may withdraw.
If that's the intent of the agreement, of the clause.
Boy, I just reread that based on that. Lance, boy, that's,
Yeah, we want it tied to the party that loses basic aid. It's their option.
So does that negate the whole agreement? Let's just pretend that you guys fall out of basic aid. So then you say, okay, I'm tapping out. Does that negate this whole agreement, or does Cayucas and Coast still part of that agreement?
well, let's play this out.
Right.
You would want this. In other words, if we fell out of basic aid, we're accepting.
You're accepting our kids,
We're taking
right?
we're taking every kid.
Now,
Right.
what we're not gonna
Everybody.
get is the 25%.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We're taking kids from Hanford.
Right. Yeah, all bets are off,
Our
right?
efficiency budget.
But Walt, I see what you mean. This is not clear to me. Now
So
that I
it-
read it
so
more
it-
So it
closely.
needs to specify the district who falls out of status. So I think if we just change or one of the to the word such.
Yeah.
Then that refers to the party that lost basic aid status. And in that case, the other two districts would probably wanna get together and
And it's-
negotiate whether
So
they're
then, right.
canceling the agreement or not.
Well, then why do you need the part, this agreement may also be amended or terminated by the parties? Why can't we just get rid, I mean,
It's
why is,
actually a repeat of.
yeah, just get rid of that sentence, because that doesn't need to be there.
So what if we say, in the event that any of the parties here to loses basic aid or community funded status, take out this agreement may be amended or terminated, such parties may withdraw from this agreement.
Such party.
Such party.
Yeah, because otherwise,
Singular.
the district loses basic aid, it should be able to call the shots.
Yeah.
And the mutual agreement to terminate is already up there in paragraph A. So I think that, so
That strengthens it.
such party and then lose the rest.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's good.
Okay, I got it.
Okay, so, Carrie, do you have any final words?
Yeah, well, my concern is part A. I understand part B, but if we want to play out a scenario, and the question, and again, well, you mentioned this is a question for Cayucas Board, which I will be asking. The question was, if Cayucas signs this, are the other avenues going to be pursued? Because right now, we don't know if Senator Monting's going to pick up the legislation that was brought up by one of our stakeholders. So let's say that is brought up, it's taken, it's successful, and then the other what if our community does a successful petition, and then we want to become a component district of you, which would be the great, because then you would get all that 1 point whatever million.
We would probably agree with that.
Right, but right, exactly. But this wouldn't allow us to get out. Coast would still, and yes, it is going to be a battle. It's not. It could be unlikely. Who knows? But this, if that happened, Coast would still hold us over a barrel to not let us out. So
Except that they would lose the $1.5 million also, so
No,
why
but-
would they wanna continue this? If you became a component district of us and the money came to San Luis Coastal, Coast would not have the same interest in continuing this.
So
I guess,
I would just suggest that your board consider the implications of the dual track which we're pursuing is.
Or three.
whether or not you should sign this agreement.
that's gonna be on your.
right, no, okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go around the table here and see if anybody has concerns about bringing this document forward as possible, with possible amendments that we've shared with Eric for discussion, action Tuesday night. Okay? Mark, what do you think? You good? Walter, you
I'm
good?
good, I'd like a red line. When you make
I've
changes,
done
it
that
makes it
in
so
our
much
comments
easier
here,
for us.
so.
So Kim and I will, after this, we'll take care of that piece, and then we'll send those to Jan as a proposed change.
Okay.
Jan will give it once over, and what I have, I'm sorry, Kristen,
That's okay, no.
I'm jumping to items, so we'll add, 3E, and that would be, if the denial occurs, county overturns, DOR, pays per MOU, something to that effect. 5, A, define promptly.
Well, because that's several times in the document, couldn't you just put that in the definitions?
Okay.
Because promptly shows.
No,
I'm sorry.
Carrie,
I'm sorry.
thank
Sorry.
you.
And it's
Yeah.
usually contextual.
Yeah,
So-
all right, so Eric,
Okay.
you're gonna get a clarification on that?
In good faith.
Yes, I will.
Okay.
And then 8C, we need to add districts of residents shall participate in the meetings or be invited to participate in any meetings to 8C, like it is in 8G. Okay, and that's the third adjustment.
And then the Blattner problem.
And then the what?
The Blattner problem. The,
Yep.
yeah.
And then 10, we need to clean up and make clearer. That'll be the fourth adjustment.
Okay.
And then I would say 5 would be 11, which is the insurance, can we define the amount?
Okay.
You know, and then the 6th adjustment has to do with 14B, which is cleaning up in the event that any of the parties here too, take out some of that, clean it up. And that's what I have from the board.
As far as the insurance is concerned, I don't know that we have to express what everybody's coverage is. I just think that the parties need to know what each other's coverage is for that to be meaningful.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be part of this because that may change.
We all have the system, same system policies.
So articulate,
I just think it's kind of among the negotiators thing.
okay.
Just share, everybody sends an email, here's our coverage, you know. Something easy.
Okay, I will do
Mark, you
that.
still good?
Yeah.
Walter?
Good.
Ellen?
I'm good, but I have a quick question. Do you think we'll be able to have a revised copy of this prior to the meeting or prior to?
Well, my goal is to have this posted on Friday.
Okay.
You'll
so
get
you
this
think-
Friday.
So you think
Have it
you'll?
now.
Well, but it
Yeah,
hasn't
right.
been run by
No.
Ellen?
my question is, will you have a chance to have the discussion with the attorney prior to and have the suggested revisions vetted and approved, so that that's what's included in the agenda packet.
So my response back to that is, I'm hopeful to connect with Jan today. I haven't seen my email, so I don't know if she got back from Bob, but I hope she hasn't, so that we can add this stuff in for clarification purposes. My goal is to send those changes, those adjustments to Scott Smith in Cayucas and Vicky in Coast prior to Friday.
Okay, so that you can basically say, this is the version my board is acting on.
Correct.
Okay,
Good.
so that's
Correct.
my question.
That's
you
going
know,
to be the document that Coast
'cause otherwise,
and Cayucas has in order to make sure that this is, this discussion is reflected in their discussions.
right, because otherwise we kind of had to have this discussion again Tuesday night, which I'm trying to avoid.
Yep.
So, but with that, well, with or without that caveat, I'm okay.
Good. Jim?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Good
All right.
work.
Do we have any other, I don't think we have any other business on our agendas.
Can I
Gary, thank you for-
request this to update, not tonight, not today?
I have one more comment if I'm allowed.
Oh, well, we have to check.
Morro Bay Pool, what's going on with the city as far as the MOU, as far as
Friday,
opening.
Community use?
So would you,
Thank you.
do you like me to share that Friday notes? Or
That
would
would
you
be
like me
fine,
to talk
that
about
could,
it?
that could be in the Friday Focus, it could be wherever you want, Friday
Well,
Focus.
I can put in Friday Focus as well as talk to you about it.
But I don't wanna take time right now, because I see people that are looking at the clock.
Carrie, did you have one more?
Well, just my one more of a strategy type thing. I was involved in this attempt previously when Coast bailed at the last minute without any kind of explanation. I am concerned personally about letting them vote last.
Okay.
Because that's more of a strategy thing. It's like, they've never had an explanation for why they bailed, and if they know how we're voting, they could just say, oh, you guys vote, oh, too bad, we don't want it. Because they're gonna be losing $500 million, plus dollars. So I would encourage, and I'm gonna encourage my board too, to let's talk about this in February. There's so many changes right now. It hasn't been out for the public long enough, and I think it would be more transparent on the board's part to have the public look at it for a longer time. So I would love it for it to say, okay, let's vote on it at all of our February meetings, instead of letting them have that much ahead of time and have the upper hand as always.
Thanks.
All right, thanks everybody. Should we leave our table?
Yeah, I wanna read that.
We wanna leave this?
I do.
I'm taking it.
So I'm gonna try to get you a revised version, prior to Friday.
Okay.
Actually, tomorrow's Friday.
It's already posted on the website, so it's already out there. Right, I know, but if you
Yeah,
Fine.
I hear.
yeah.
And I'd like to know what's going on.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
I'll send you an email with my updated phone.
And I'm not gonna be here, everybody, I'm not gonna be here Monday.
You're welcome.
You better not be a National Association of School Boards.
No, I'm gonna be in Patagonia, actually. Tuesday I'll be down in Patagonia.
Have you read